Hello, welcome to WriteHive Lite and our class on how could you creating memorable antagonists. So let's start with, I guess, the why you care about learning this from me. My name is Justine Manzano. This is our introduction. Who am I and why should you listen to me? I am the geeky author of the geeky YA series Keys and Guardians and geeky YA novel Never Say Never. Known as a professional life ruiner by antagonist, my fiction is tough on the outside and sweet on the inside like an M&M or a hard candy with a gooey center delivered with sass and snark. A freelance editor, I also serve as an editor in residence here at WriteHive. Which means you can always find me at the Word Nerd Cafe, or our podcast, and you can always find me in the Ask an Editor section of our Discord. I've worked in acquisitions and as both a content and line editor at small publishing companies, as a reader for YA Lit Mags, and in the corporate sector, helping people grammar it up in their legal briefs. I've worked as an editor for Writer in Motion, Query Connection, and the Young Inkling Society. And I live in the Bronx, New York, with my husband and co-editor at Manzano Editorial, my freelance company, and our teenage son. So that's who I am. That's how I know about writing antagonists. And now I'm going to start talking to you about why you need them. So antagonists are probably the most important characters in your story, second only to your protagonist. So they should drive your story just as much as your protagonist does. So how do you create an antagonist that is interesting and dynamic? So I'm going to give you a few tips for crafting unique antagonists that pack one hell of a punch, figuratively and sometimes literally. And we're going to just talk about why and how you can create these characters that can make your readers angry to the appropriate amount and really, really care about what happens to your antagonist as well. So the class title is a lot. It's not just about antagonists, it's also about villains, which is why before we get started on tips, I want to make a very important point. So I'm going to start the way a lot of people on the internet make points, and it's the most annoying thing a person on the internet can do. I'm going to post a definition. Antagonist. In Merriam-Webster's dictionary, antagonist is defined as one that contends with or opposes another. So that's what an antagonist is. Meanwhile, villain has three different definitions. It can be a character in a story or play who opposes the hero, which sounds very much like the antagonist definition. A deliberate scoundrel or criminal, or one blamed for a particular evil or difficulty. So that's decidedly not the same thing as an antagonist. And that's because an antagonist does not have to be a villain. When I was writing my YA contemporary novel, Never Say Never, I decided I didn't want my antagonist to be a villain. I wanted a character who clashed with our main character, but I really didn't want to make that person evil. I wanted the character to be misguided, to do things that were troubling, maybe be kind of jerky sometimes, but I didn't want any of the characters to really hate her. So I created an antagonist without creating a villain. And what I did to give you a little background, Never Say Never is about Bryn, a girl who is struggling with the divorce of her parents and her best friend's breakup, and she swears off love. But our antagonist is her friend Val, who we don't realize at the time, and Bryn doesn't know, is actually Aphrodite in human form. And Aphrodite has been thrown out of Mount Olympus and has lived amongst humans for centuries and is really, really pro-love and thinks that it's her job to make sure that Bryn becomes pro-love too. And in that way, she ends up having her own arc throughout the story, of trying to persuade Brynn and bring her to her side and find her love, which is literally the opposite of what Brynn wants. And so they clash regularly throughout the story, but she means well for the most part. She's misguided for sure, and there are reasons why, like, it goes a little deeper than that, but I wanted you to actually sort of like Val, and even when she was being a pain in the ass, which she is, so I didn't make her a villain, because I think villains, and we'll go a little more into this, are more don't mean well always, or usually don't mean well. There's a criminal or violent component to the idea of a villain. So a villain does have to be an antagonist. Another example for me, I promise I have examples from other people. But for me, this is how I approach, and it's easiest to explain how I approach, I guess. So when I was crafting the Order of the Key, I needed a villain, because the Order of the Key is a story of a girl named Jacqueline who finds out that she is meant to be a hero, almost like she's a geek, and almost like her comic book heroes that she loves, but that power that's given to her is to Jacqueline is a hindrance in a lot of ways, and it makes her unsafe, and it becomes, the realities of being a hero versus just reading about them or watching them on TV are a big part of the story. And so I needed a villainous antagonist, because I needed to have this idea of Jacqueline's perception of what a hero was versus reality, which was extremely dangerous and scary for herself and for her family. So I created a character who selfishly allowed people to die to gain power. Someone who took pleasure in displaying that power to create fear in the protagonist and those around her, and who works to facilitate the encroachment of terrifying creatures in the world of our heroes. She is a villain and she's an antagonist. But the key here, and the part that we're going to explore further, is that she's interesting. And that is how you have a good antagonist, because in one note antagonist, a muhaha villain, is a lot less fun and a lot less captivating than a well-rounded antagonist. So the difference lies in the levels to which the things they do are truly out of malice. An antagonist believes they know what's right, and therefore acts the way they believe is just, even though that trips up the protagonist. A villain does so, but they take pleasure in upsetting the protagonist. They're vicious in their execution, and they don't just want to stop the protagonist, they want to hurt them. So in that way, a villain is just a more, I guess, more malevolent character. So examples. So we have, and I just realized that my my graphics a little screwy here, but it's okay. I'm covering up part of the Wreck-It Ralph explanation. But Wreck-It Ralph has a villain. If nobody's seen Wreck-It Ralph here, I'll explain a little bit. Wreck-It Ralph is about a bad guy in a game, and that's Ralph. And he is very, he doesn't want to be the villain anymore. He's tired of it. He lives in his game and he gets in trouble. Like he lives in like away from all the other people in his game, and everyone in the game judges him. And those are the Nicelanders. That's the game he's in. The town people are the Nicelanders, and they very much feel like Ralph is below them and is like a bad guy, even though he's just doing what the game tells him to do. And the Nicelanders are the antagonist that isn't a villain. So they had these perceptions of Ralph, and they are working with those perceptions. They believe these things about him, and so they get in his way a lot, even though they're not people who are trying to hurt him or trying to do damage. They just really believe that he is not capable of being a nice guy, or fitting into their society. And then they have the villain in that story is King Candy, and King Candy is, sorry if there's spoilers here, is this guy in another game called Candy Crush, which Vanellope, the little girl in the story, is from. And he pretty much wants to run that game and doesn't want any interferences, and has actually corrupted the game. He's come from a different game, and he corrupted the game so that he basically wrote Vanellope, who's like the princess, the main character of the game, and basically wrote her out of the game and made himself the leader of the town that they're in the game. So he is a villain. He is out to hurt Vanellope. He is eventually out to gain power outside of his own game. He's already gone from one game where he got it broken because he was acting however he wanted and wasn't playing along with the rules, and went to this game and took it over instead and made it his world. And so he is the actual villain. And then we have poor Ralph, who's the main character, and he's sort of his own worst enemy. He gets in his own way a lot because he believes a lot of what the antagonists tell him, and he believes in he thinks he's kind of a bumbling dummy sometimes, and it takes a while for him to sort of figure out his way out of the situations he's in. But in the end, he's actually really a hero because he does save Vanellope in all the games, and it's, yeah, spoilers, sorry. But yeah, that's how, that right there, I think, is a very clear picture of the difference between an antagonist and a villain, because the Nicelanders are just kind of more societal mainstays who believe that you have to be like a certain way to fit in, whereas the villain is King Candy, who's really just trying to bust things up. Another example, Spider-Man. So again, a little background for people who've never watched Spider-Man, read Spider-Man comics, which, as I said, geeky YA writer. I have definitely I've been reading Spider-Man comics since I was like a wee lass. I don't even remember. I think as long as I could read. My big brother used to just like give me stacks of comics to read. So Spider-Man and Batman I've been reading since I was like very, very small, and others too, like Moon Knight, which no one else had heard of before, or very few people had heard of. But excuse me, I'm sorry, a little sip of iced tea. Okay. The villains in Spider-Man are very obvious. So you've got Green Goblin, you've got Dr. Octopus, you've got all these, Mysterio, all these characters that like you see in the movies are the villains. Not Killer Croc, that's Batman. Now I can't think of his name, but there's a lizard that his name is escaping me at the moment. And they're all like the super powered bad guys, right? Electro is another one. And they're obvious. They're like the big, I'm going to go and kill blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to take over the city, or I'm going to steal from banks, those types of people, or I'm going to destroy things. Very obvious villain types. But then you have an antagonist, which there are others throughout the story, but the main antagonist you see that recurs is J. Jonah Jameson. And J. Jonah Jameson is a reporter. He was the owner of the Daily Bugle, I think it's evolved now. I know that there's a podcast in some versions of it. There's a TV show in others. But he's basically a reporter. And he has decided that Spider-Man is a menace. And he wants to, he thinks that he should be stopped. He's not following rules. He's not a police officer. Why is he stopping bad guys? What does he have to hide? Is he really one of these crazy super powered bad guys? Like, what is his deal? He doesn't trust Spider-Man, and he twists the truth sometimes to fit his idea of who he believes Spider-Man is. And so we'll, like, if anyone accuses him of doing wrong, we'll like rush at it and oh yeah, Spider-Man, yeah, he's a bad guy. Get me pictures of Spider-Man doing something bad. And so there's a lot of tension there, and J. Jonah Jameson gets in his way a lot. If you saw not No Way Home, Far From Home, you know how it ended, and Far From Home, J. Jonah Jameson ended up getting in his way so badly that the entirety of No Way Home happened, because of the way that he interfered in his life. So he does cause a lot of trouble for Spider-Man. He is an antagonist. He has his own reasons for everything he's doing. So do the villains. But J. Jonah Jameson isn't trying to hurt people. And at one point, if one standout point in my mind is in the first Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, when Green Goblin is threatening J. Jonah Jameson, and he wants to know who Peter Parker, who is Spider-Man, but he doesn't know. Green Goblin says, who takes the pictures of Spider-Man? And that's Peter Parker. And he doesn't know that he's also the alternate, like the true personality of Spider-Man. He says, who takes the pictures? And J. Jonah says that they're sent to him, that he doesn't know the kid and doesn't know the person that sends them, and protects Peter Parker's identity, even though it could mean that he gets killed. So to me, like, that's an antagonist, but it's not a villain. He's not a bad person. He's just got questionable ideas that clash with Peter's ideals. So that's another example. Then there's Independence Day. And like a lot of villains, the aliens in Independence Day are completely impersonal to the protagonist. They want to end the world. They don't really explain why. In their case, the stakes are large enough to make the story exciting. However, can you tell me something interesting that stood out about the aliens in that movie that made them unique and different to any other alien or world-ending villain in most movies that you see? I don't want my villains to be that kind of memorable. Yes, they're scary looking, but I guess it depends on what is the most important part of your story. Is it your characters triumphing over adversity in general? So that might work for you in that case. If the point is to throw obstacles in your character's way, and those obstacles don't really need to have like a basis in personality or character, then that's okay. But it could be even more powerful if the adversity comes from a more personal character with more stakes and more interaction with your lead. So that leads me to, what are the elements of a great antagonist or villain? So to understand that, we're gonna actually analyze a lot of the things that you need for a protagonist, because I feel like when you're building a protagonist and when you're building an antagonist, you should be doing this at the same time. And those characters can be mirrors of each other. They shouldn't be exactly like each other, but it's a very interesting thing when they do play off each other and their situation, it is close enough that you could almost see them getting along in another life, or you could see where they could be interesting, like could be friends or could be allies, but something goes wrong, right? So the first thing, just like when you're dealing with a protagonist, you want to make sure that you nail their emotional wound. So what is that, right? Like if you I don't know, like how advanced you are in your story process. Everybody here is probably very different. So you're getting a class on protagonists too, sort of. So an emotional wound is basically the thing in the character's life that makes them believe a lie. And so that leads to the next one, which is the lie they believe. So rarely do characters pop up and think, like, let's do evil things, right? As a matter of fact, the best antagonists usually think they're doing the right thing, even if you don't understand. Like, even if the protagonist does not understand, they are right. Like, get it together in your head. You're wrong. I'm the one who knows how to fix this problem, or I'm the one who knows the best way to do this, and your way is the wrong way. You're the one with the crazy ideas. So what would make a person feel that way or be willing to do that? Usually that would be that lie that they believe. So the emotional wound has led them to believe this lie. And we don't always need to specifically know the lie in the story. Sometimes it can be obviously stated. Sometimes it is just sort of in the background of the character. We can like sort of hide it in there based on their reactions or their beliefs, and you can kind of get an idea of what that lie is. You don't always need to clearly state it, but you should always know it as the author. With a protagonist, you're going to be able to more directly address that lie, because it becomes really the driving point of what the protagonist does, and the antagonist is generally a background character. Unless your antagonist or your villain is a point of view character, you're not going to have as much time or book real estate to dive into their lie. So it'll be easier for us if you're like, as a reader, it will be less heavy-handed if it's sort of like something we can glean from their actions or reactions to the character. Yeah, you're not going to have as much time to directly address it in the antagonist or villain. You want them, your protagonist as well as your antagonist and villain, to have a want, a desire. Usually that want is something they only believe that they should have because of their lie. So going with the King Candy reference. King Candy believes that he is superior to other characters in all of his games because he figured out how to get to other games from his game. So that, rather than make him think anything else, makes him think that he is better than everyone else. And that makes him want power and want to basically lord over the other game characters. So that is that want, and that usually spins off from the lie that they believe. If they're an antagonist, they should probably, throughout the course of the story, not receive this want. And unless the antagonist wins at the end. If the antagonist wins at the end, give them their want, because their want will probably be the opposite of what your protagonist wants. And so you reward it, that's a reward for their behavior, right? Getting the want. So yeah, your their want should clash with the protagonist's want, because those two things can't exist together, or else they wouldn't be getting into each other's way. Their desires run counter to each other. You also need a need. This is usually, so what does the character actually need? Not what they want. Sometimes this is to learn a lesson. There, Candy needed to be humbled. He was not better than anyone else, and he needed to be shown that. In the Never Say Never example, what Val/Aphrodite needs is to understand that she can't twist people to behave however she wants them to. And that's something that her goddess abilities in the past had made her not realize. And so she needed to be taught that. So that was her need. Sometimes to learn lessons, sometimes it's just to be stopped. They need to be stopped. Your antagonist should get this if the antagonist loses in the end. If the antagonist wins, then that need goes out the window in favor of their want. There must be some kind of consequences, something your antagonist stands to lose if the protagonist wins, and vice versa. So in the Order of the Key, if the antagonist wins, Jacqueline and her family will be killed. If Jacqueline wins, she and the rest of their rebellion against the leader will accomplish what it's trying to accomplish, and the current leader will be overthrown. So again, they have to, what they stand to gain and what they stand to lose should be opposite of each other. Your character, when it's a protagonist, needs good and bad qualities. This is also true for your antagonist and your villain. Give them something. Give them something that's good about them. Give them a save the cat moment. Doesn't mean they're not a bad guy. And that's the thing. I think it's like when people hear about, a little bit of a trigger warning here, talking about the Holocaust, but when people hear about that and they want to make Hitler this monster, but Hitler loved dogs, and Hitler was kind to people around him. I mean, don't get me wrong, killed ancestors of mine, not a good person, not even claiming that, but everybody has good and bad qualities. No one is this arch villain. And it's that humanity that makes people, whichever side they land on, that much more compelling and more interesting to look into and dive into, because they are people who have these like clashing views. They, would never hurt a child, but they're cool with killing to get money, or things like that. Like things that are, or they love music, and they think music is like, the key to happiness in the world. And yet they'll happily, kill people next to them. They love their family, and they go to church every Sunday, but they're the leader of the mob. Like these things are the things that make characters way more interesting, because they are people, well-rounded people that have their good sides and their bad sides, and those things live together in that human. Now, while we in real life don't really want to like hang around antagonists and villains, real world ones, we also like, it's that well-roundedness that makes our bad characters so interesting. This is why we end up loving characters like Loki and Thor, right? Like this is the key, is you have Loki being this funny guy who is sarcastic and snarky and has one-liners and believes that he's been slighted. By the way, that's his lie, that his emotional wound is this feeling that he's lesser than that is the treatment of his family, and the lie that he believes is the idea that he is less than Thor, or he's believed to be less than Thor, and his want is to gain that sense of rightness and that power that he thinks he deserves, that Thor has. But his need is to be humbled. His need is to see that his family would love him anyway, as long as he would just like stop and stop doing bad things, that he would be accepted. He faces consequences after the New York incident in the original Avengers. He's this interesting character, but he kills a massive amount of Earthlings or humans in the original Avengers movie. And he kills quite a lot of people, I think, other than that, before he ends up finding his way to be a good person. That's what makes people love him. That's why people are like obsessed with him. Thanos truly believes he's doing the right thing. Loves his daughter. Sacrifices her anyway, despite his love for her, because he's so sure he's right in what he's doing. Believes he's helping people while he kills half the population. Because they need supplies. And without that, if the whole population is able to survive, well, then there won't be enough for everybody. So let's cut that in half so that people can thrive. Believes he's doing the right thing, but has this horrific justification and is a compelling character. It's one of the few, like, Marvel doesn't always get their villains right, but there are quite a few in the movies that really do have that great character storytelling, and those villains are the ones that stick with you. So maybe they love to read, maybe they make a mean lasagna. Play with the range of human emotions and behaviors. Definitely don't leave them stuck as a flat mustache twirling villain who laughs maniacally. Give us a reason to wish things could have been different. It makes it all the more tragic when that villain is doing something horrible. If you could see where they could have been a good character, they could have been one of the good guys, if only. That's the kind of thing that grabs us. You know, Harvey Dent, Two-Face from the Batman comics. He was a up-and-coming, running for DA, looking to do good in the city. And then, he was disfigured, and it made him feel, it brought out sides to him that he kept buried under this need to do good. And he ends up becoming this villain. He was like a really good friend of Bruce Wayne's, and now Batman has to fight him. Like, that's the compelling storytelling. That's the thing. That's the thing that grabs you. Now, consider also what others think of the antagonist. Are they frightening? Annoying? You may be writing your antagonist to villain scale if they're frightening. If they're annoying, maybe they're more antagonists. So consider that when you're painting their reputations, how people see them. Definitely consider why this person is a particular threat to your protagonist. Why are they the only ones who will give them the run for their money? Do they have like special powers just like them? Are they smarter where the other one's stronger? Are they like, what's the balance? What's the thing that makes your protagonist have to work hard to beat your antagonist or villain, or hard to thwart them? Beat sounds like I'm just talking superheroes now, but you know, even in the situation with Bryn and Val and Never Say Never, they had to argue to get to, like, they had to clash into each other and to get to the point where they could see each other's points of view. Remember that your antagonist should inspire a feeling in the protagonist like they can't possibly win, in order to nail the tension in a story. And make sure to back that up with past information or things that the character does. There should be a reason why that character is, both characters, your protag and your antagonist, are challenges for each other. And I just realized now that I forgot to change the slide, but your antagonist is a mirror of your protagonist. If you know that didn't get through off of all the other stuff I was saying. Basically, like any character, your antagonist / villain needs to be a full 3-dimensional character with wants and needs that drive them, and with a full range of human emotions. Their desires should be clear, and they should have a profound effect on your antagonist. If you create fully realized characters, the pieces will fall in place naturally, and you will have a compelling story to tell. Now, a good way to start this is to start with your character's desire and work backward. If you construct your character while asking yourself, what kind of person would the antagonist need to be in order to want this opposite outcome to my protagonist? While taking the rest of these attributes in mind, then you're going to find your way to a unique and refreshing villain or antagonist for your story. So start at the desire and figure out, who is that person? What kind of person wants to end the world? What kind of person wants to cause this kind of trouble? Like, who are they? And why would they want this? And once you get there, you'll be able to reverse engineer someone who is interesting and refreshing and challenges your protagonist. And that's what you want. So, do you still need to unlock some answers? It's Q&A time. So, I hope you enjoyed this lesson that I've just taught. We have probably about a half hour more for you all in the Discord to ask your questions, and you know, I'll answer everything I can. Talk to me about protagonists, antagonists, villains. Let's do this. And thank you all for joining me and for coming to WriteHive Lite. I really truly love doing this. This is my 3rd year teaching at WriteHive Lite, and it motivates me. It really does. If you want to check out anything about me, you can find that at JustineManzano.com. Information about Manzano editorial is there. Information about my books are there. And also feel free to swing by the main Discord that we have over at WriteHive, where you can find me at the editor desk, and you can always ask me questions there too. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you gain something out of this. I really love talking about it, and I can't wait to hear your questions. Thank you.